This is a re-recording of the PhD completion seminar I presented at the University of Melbourne earlier this week. There will be 3 videos in this series. The first one will be an introduction and the literature and theory underpinning the thesis. The next one will look at research method, results and findings. And the third one will conclude with discussion and implications. My academic journey was sparked by my growing professional curiosity for 2 decades. I've worked with schools facilitating professional development, particularly associated with provision of reimagining the place of learning, incorporating the effect of innovative spatial design. My work has taken me across Australia and internationally. I've had the opportunity to visit schools that have been recommended as exemplar for the vision of innovative design and pedagogy, where as an observer, it seemed that the intention of the design matched the future-focused aspirations of the school. I had noted, however, on return visits, while some schools maintained the vision, others had adapted the spaces toward a more traditional orientation. This led to the research, The Beauty of a Complex Future, redefining teacher success and sustainability in innovative learning environments. This professional curiosity led to an academic curiosity, and I embarked on a PhD to explore the context to understand how workplace change for teachers in ILEs might be both successful and sustainable. I was grateful that I could be part of the University of Melbourne ARC Linkage Project, ILETC, Innovative Learning Environments and Teacher Change. The project drew on a cross-disciplinary team representing education and architecture. The project material noted that in Australia and New Zealand, significant investment had been made in the provision of school infrastructure to develop ILEs. The project was seeking to explore whether this had been accompanied by commensurate changes in teaching practices in the new learning environments. Brad Beer and co-authors noted that one project partner, the New Zealand Ministry of Education, considered that these contexts for learning could have the potential to better accommodate the needs of 21st century learners than more traditional classrooms. At this juncture, a brief explanation of what is meant by an ILE is provided, as it represents learning environments characterized by innovative spatial design and innovative teaching and learning practices. And more further details of this will follow. So I became fascinated with the idea of effective workplace change for teachers, moving from the paradigm of the solo classroom practitioner to being team-based in the innovative learning environment, where the teachers are co-located with colleagues, working as a team with a future-focused orientation. The research is premised on teachers co-located in a larger space, ideally working in teams together. As I developed the primary research question, 3 main research goals surfaced: to investigate how teachers in teams have successfully adapted their professional practice, to investigate how the principle facilitated the transition of teacher practice from solo to team-based, and to recommend strategies that schools could employ for teachers in teams in ILEs. And this led to the development of the research question: what factors impact the ongoing success and sustainability of workplace change experienced by teachers as they transition to innovative learning environments? Before I touch on the research, I will firstly present some of the underpinning literature and theory that has informed the study. The literature review explored contributing factors of student deep learning, teacher mind frame, teacher change, and the innovative learning environment as an expression of innovative pedagogy and innovative spatial design. The diagram features the literature review, and this diagram frames the literature review, and I'll touch lightly on each of these. Firstly, student deep learning. At the heart of this study is student deep learning. Here, deep learning relates to attributes or dimensions that afford the foundations where students can actively engage in critical learning. Counter to this is surface learning, which is related to the process of retaining knowledge, perhaps for passing a test, with less regard for longer-term retention or the transference of knowledge. Reframing this context and content of student learning through a future-focused lens has led to capturing of a required set of skills, such as the so-called 4 Cs or the 6 Cs, to emphasize a deeper understanding rather than only surface knowledge content. so that students might have the capacity for authentic application across curriculum areas. The ILE then becomes a response to providing the physical and pedagogical context that might enable such skills to be developed. As Halpin suggests, this calls for a redesign of previously taken for granted environments for student learning, which are deemed to constitute inadequate sites for progressive educational practices. This brings us to the ILE. The working definition employed in the project recognises it as the product of innovative space design and innovative teaching and learning practices. I will contend that throughout history, teachers have utilised the classroom in creative ways in their efforts to engage students, often beyond the original intention afforded by the space. However, the premise here is that the intentional design of an innovative space can enable a broader range of pedagogical activity than the traditional classroom setting. In reviewing the literature associated with the ILETC project, innovative spatial design is seen as comprised of these elements. And this is viewed in contrast to the traditional classroom, described as accommodating one class and one teacher, characterised by Bernard as having features which include 4 walls, a closable door, and a single focal point within. Instead, innovative spatial design presents an environment where teachers need to be in a constant process of negotiation with other teachers who share the space. Lackney highlights the importance then of growing teachers' spatial competence. Byers and co-authors found that this competency was relative to teachers' ability to perceive affordances and be aware of their potential. When this occurred, teachers are able to make better use of them. Use of the learning environment thus becomes both deliberate and purposeful. This sense of spatial use in an ILE can be related to innovative teaching and learning practices aligned with constructivist pedagogy. It was suggested by Dovey and Fisher that teacher practice in such environments is characterised by a shift in the focus from top-down power over, teach directed, toward that of empowering students with agency. The adoption of the innovative teaching and learning practices by teachers, however, requires attention to what Bernard calls their inner world, addressing teachers' mind frame and beliefs about students and learning, where, as Hattie suggests, teachers think more about learning than teaching. Tobin and his colleagues who used the term mind frame applied it to describe cognitive factors that have a direct influence on the manner in which the teacher structures the learning environment. When thinking about teachers and change, my focus is on transformation. This is viewed as reconceptualizing teacher change as an identity process that is a dynamic, complex, and interactive practice. The ILETC project noted that the challenges of the innovative learning environment emerge due to the massive investment in this infrastructure not being mirrored by commensurate changes in teacher practice. Teacher professional development has been seen as critical to this transformation. However, Fisher describes the approaches to appropriate professional learning afforded by teachers in ILEs as patchy and largely rooted in 20th century practice. Rather, Lukács and Galuzzo recommend a continuous path of professional learning which promotes the posture of teachers as active agents of change. Finally, the literature review concluded that the role of the principal in the context of change and transformation, noting that a single solution to leading change in an ILE is unlikely as each school community reflects its own distinct perspective. It is the uniqueness that amplifies the complexity of this context of schools in the 21st century. From the literature review, I concluded that student deep learning, teacher mind frame, and the innovative learning environment presents a unique and emerging context for schools. This will now be viewed through the prism of complexity theory, where navigating change in schools is iterative and negotiated rather than predictably causal linear. En route to this, stops include critical social theory, organizational culture, and schools as complex adaptive systems. Complexity theory reinforces an ongoing response to change, adaptation, and evolution. It breaks with the idea of simple determinism and cause and effect models. The theoretical discussion led to the development of the conceptual framework through an exploration of complexity theory. This diagram is used to encapsulate the complex adaptive system, such as a school. It is comprised of consistent yet dynamic parts. Self-organizing agents of the system operate with enabling constraints, and agents engage in non-linear and dynamic interactions to facilitate emergence, which is described as the outputs of the system's activity. Each of these agents, interactions, and emergence are explained as the properties of the systems and form the big rocks of the conceptual framework. At the intersection of these big rocks, if big rocks can actually be intersected, is the work of the system, identifying positive deviance, building social capital, and applying abductive reasoning. The circle surrounding the properties and the work of the system represents the role of the principal as articulating the context and culture, applying enabling constraints, and equipping and empowering the teachers with agency. Each of these elements of literature and theory form the basis of the research. This is the conclusion of that first part, and next I will move to the idea of research method.